All right. So last class, we made it so that you got points, got XP whenever you were doing a job for mod, and that's kind of where we're going to start out this week. So the first thing we're going to do, what we're doing tonight is once you get enough XP, you can start doing hits for mod, and so we're gonna make a new Lua for lesson 5, but we're gonna have to do a couple of things before we get there, and we're gonna make a new Lua in the server also for lesson 5. I've already made those two. Um, so the first thing we got to do is we got to add an option for um, doing the hits. So we'll go to the config. I've already put that in. So option 4 is now sign the Hitman contract. You have to have an ink pen in your pocket still. We've talked about that in a previous lesson. And whenever you trigger that event, you're going to trigger a client event called start hit. And I've already put it in the lesson 4 Lua. It's a pretty simple one. Just start hit. I got a QB core debug there just to make sure it launches whenever you use that third eye target. You're going to get your local current XP, which is xp.modxp, and that's going to be from our table that we're tracking. Because whenever we do our on player loaded, we also create our XP table from last time. This is from the last class. So we get our XP table and we populate a table on the client side that we're going to be updating as they do missions. So you'll remember whenever they delivered a car for mod, she gave them some XP for that. So whenever they do the third eye for start hit, we're going to populate, we're going to get their current XP from the table that was loaded on player loaded. And then we're going to check and see if it's greater than or equal to 10. So that means they would have had to deliver 10 cars to qualify for the Hitman job. If so, then that's going to start our lesson 5 script that we're going to write. And if not, they'll just get a notice that they don't have enough experience. So let's start writing our script for the hit. All right. So as always, on the first line, you got to have your QB core exports. Get QB core object. That's always the first thing that you put at the top of every script when you're using QB core. We're going to make 3 variables tonight for this mission. We're going to have hit selected. We're going to set that equal to nil. We're going to have initiate timer. We're going to set that equal to 0 because they're going to have to get the hit done within a certain amount of time, or they're going to fail. And then after they kill the victim, we're going to create a third eye target near the victim, and that's going to be where they grab evidence that they bring back to mod. So that's the 3 variables that we need. We're setting those up here because we want to use those in all the functions we're going to write tonight. All right, so the first event we're going to do is going to be called start hit. Oops. Lesson 5 start hit. What did I call it on lesson 4? I didn't call it the same thing, did I? Lesson 5 client start hit. Dev. Oh yeah, I called it Keisui lesson 5 here, and then I called it Keisui dev training here. So it's a different name, and that's how we're going to send it over to lesson 5. All right, and so then we're going to select a hit, which reminds me I have to go back to the config and show you some other things that we did. Okay, so for lesson 3, lesson 4, so for lesson 5, this is our config table. So let's run through this real quick. So our first hit is going to be against a reporter. I used the paparazzi model for this mission because the paparazzi model has some specific animations where he will do the stop and he takes his camera out and he does the flash, 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 takes pictures. Because the way you're going to find him is Mod's going to send you an email and tell you that the guy likes to take photographs of the Ferris wheel. So we're going to spawn a paparazzi. We're going to make him take pictures of the Ferris wheel. And in order to do that, we're going to spawn him at a location. And then these path coords, these are just vector 4s that I've already grabbed. These are all on the boardwalk. So he's going to spawn near a door on the boardwalk, and then he's going to walk this path to the Ferris wheel. And then once he gets to the Ferris wheel, he's going to do this animation, which is, this is the dictionary where the animation is found, and this is the library. That's the actual animation. It's just base animation. And then this is going to be our payout after we're done. And you're going to have, it's going to be 20 seconds from the time you launch the mission until the guy actually spawns and starts his walk. And yeah, and then we're going to have a timer until it runs out. But anyway, so we had to put this in the config. I've made some other hits that we'll do in future lessons. This is going to be a short one tonight. We'll be able to burn through these a little faster next time. And these are going to be different. The gangster, I plan to have him driving a car, and security, I plan to have him doing a job. So this guy's gonna have a really complicated path, and he's gonna try to defend himself. This guy's gonna have a simple roaming path in a car, but those will be for the next lessons. So tonight we're gonna kill a walking ped, and we're gonna learn how to make him walk to locations and do actions. All right, so we're going to, we did a math random of 1 because we're only using one of the configs. Whenever we add the second mission, we'll put math random 1 to 2, and then it'll randomly select between the hits. But so this stuff is, these two are for the future. Shit, my headset's going dead. Am I still? Yeah, I'm still alive. Battery's dying. All right, so tonight we're just doing the first one, so we can just minimize those. Those don't matter tonight. It's just going to bypass them because since we're doing math random between 1 and 1, it's always going to be the first select hit. And then it's going to trigger initiate timer. That's going to be the next step to this mission. That way they've got a timer for how long they can do it. So then we're going to set up our next function. Our next net event is to initiate the timer. We're going to, just for good practice, slap a debug in there so that we're sure that that it launched. Let me go ahead and add my end, so we'll get rid of the curlies. So to do the timer, we're just going to set up a loop. It's going to be while initiate timer is greater than 0, do wait 100, initiate timer equals initiate timer minus 1000. So where are we setting the initiate timer? I'm sorry, I just totally ignore everything I just said. I'll cut it out of the video. So initiate timer should be the hit selected initiate timer, which is the 20 seconds, because this is the timer before the mission starts. All right. So then it's going to wait 20 seconds, and then it's going to start the mission. And the reason I had taken it out, I remember why I took it out, is just so it would start immediately. So when I was debugging while I was doing my work, and I just forgot to put it back in. All right. And so then once the timer's up, it's going to this event text. This is a way to trigger an event. Let me see if I can explain this. Okay, so I have we'll eventually have 3 different events that we can trigger depending on which task that they've chosen, whether it was hit selected reporter or it was, and we got to do something here too. I must have like really been out of it, because this should have hit selected as a past variable, because we selected our hit, which was reporter, and then we initiate our timer and we want to send over which hit we selected. So this is now the value reporter. So when the function is caught, it'll have, oh, wait, I know. Okay, shit. I'm sorry, fuck. It's been a week since I wrote this, so I apologize. I have hit selected as a local variable, so it can read in all the functions. So I did it right. So, so when we do hit selected and we assign it to reporter, right? That assigns this variable to reporter, and you can see it's red in all the deals. So the first part of our function is going to be dev training lesson 5, and then after this colon is going to be reporter. So if you set up a variable like this, then you've actually put a text string together, which is what you do whenever you're triggering an event. You have a text string, right? Whenever you trigger an event. So we just made a variable of a text string so that we can trigger the event without having to without having to type it out. And the reason we did that is because if you picked one of these other two, gangster or security, then this would be lesson 5 gangster, lesson 5 security. In this case, we're just doing reporter, so it's going to be KSUE Dev Training lesson 5 reporter. And I'm sorry that I confused everybody with that. Hopefully it makes sense now. Does it make sense? You with me, Devect? All right,
What was
good.
that, sorry?
Never mind. It's fine. All right, and I've got an end that's not liked here, and it's because I got to close here. We need to get rid of that. And we got to add a comma there. Ooh. And what is going on? QB Core debug. What is going? Oh, we need function. Open close. There we go. Okay, now we're ready to move on. All right, so now we're going to trigger the event KSUE Dev Training Lesson 5 Reporter, which we just explained how we got that sort of. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. We made the event text. This, whenever you add hit selected, is reporter, and so it's going to equal this. That's actually a good trick. I wish I had done a better job of not screwing up while I was explaining it. All right, so we're going to add our debug here to make sure this one triggers. Gosh dang it. And we're going to have several variables that are going to pull from our config file. So we're going to have our model from our config. We're going to have our prop from our config, our spawn chords from our config, our path chords, our animation dictionary, and our animation library. And we've been through how to, if you don't know how all of this works, then go back and watch lesson 1 because I explained how to use configs in great detail during lesson 1. All right, and then we're gonna throw a debug in here to make sure we've got the right animation dictionary and animation library, just to make sure that it's pulled them over correctly. And then we're gonna make a final variable for email, and that's gonna be the message that's sent in the email. So it's right here. It's gonna send this message to their email. All right. So the next thing we got to do, we're going to be trying to spawn the reporter, so we have to assign a value to model. And you have to get the hash key of model because model on our config file is a text string, and that doesn't work for the native. It has to be a hash key. So you use model to get hash key, and then we don't have to do that. I don't think. I'm gonna skip that. All right, and then once you've got the hash for the model, in order to spawn it, you have to actually request the model from the server. That's a FiveM native, and I think we went through all this whenever we spawned mod in on the QB target. So if you're not sure what all of this means, you can go get a little more detailed instruction from lesson number 2, I believe. Or no, it was lesson 1 is where we did QB target and spawned in mod. All right. So we're going to want to send the player an email, so we're going to need another local variable, and this is their citizen ID, and this is the QB core function, QB core function get player data.citizen ID. That's how you get the player citizen ID on the client side. You don't have to put anything in here because you're on the client side, and if it's blank, it just means to look for this particular client. All right, and then there's this, we're going to be using QB phone email system. And so there's a specific way that your email data has to be set up for the phone system. So you have to have mail data equals, you're wanting to send it over as mail data. It's going to be a table. The first variable is sender, the second variable is subject, the third is message, and the last one is an empty table called button. And this is just, if you're going to use QB phone and you want to send somebody an email, you have to do this. If you're using a different phone system than QB phone, this won't work, and you'd have to read the documentation for the phone system you're using to figure out how to send an email. All right, so this means the timer's up, and so we want the player to be alerted as to who their target is. So to send an email with QB phone, it's this command, and then we're sending over mail data, which we just filled out in the table, and then we're sending it to their citizen ID. And so this will make an email pop up on their phone with their instructions. And to make sure everything worked, we're going to throw a debug in to make sure the mail was sent. That'll feed to our server log so we can see if it worked or not. And then we're ready to create our hit target. And we're going to call him HitPed. And so create ped, we've done this before whenever we spawn mod in. This is a FiveM native, and so this is just the format you need to spawn in a character. This true means that he's going to be server side, so everybody will see the character. And then once you do that, when you're on the client side, you want to wait and make sure that he exists before you try to do anything with him. And so you put a while not does entity exist hitped. So we just said to create it, but it doesn't happen instantly. It seems like it's instant, but it takes milliseconds. So before we do anything with this ped, we need to make sure that he exists on the client side, or else you'll get value nil errors whenever you're trying to assign variables or assign information to the ped. You'll get errors in your either your F8 log or your server log, and that's because he doesn't exist for a few milliseconds. So we do a wait, and as soon as he is actually in the server, he's identified, and this has a variable assigned to it instead of nil, then it'll exit out of this loop. And we're going to give ourselves a, we're going to send the player a message to let them know their hit target is active. And so we're just going to tell them the reporter is on the boardwalk. It's a notify. And Ksui is a custom notify that I made. We're not going to talk about that tonight, but normally you have either success or error here. You can also make your own custom notifications, and we'll talk about that maybe sometime in the future. All right, the next thing we want to do is we don't want the player is going to be pretty far from their target initially, and we don't know that there's going to be any clients in the area of the target. And so we want to set that entity as a mission entity. That way he doesn't despawn. By setting them as a mission entity, that means that he will stay spawned into the server whether there's anyone close to him or not. If you don't set him as a mission entity, it's possible that he can despawn if there's no players close to him. All right, and so we're going to set up his path now. So we're going to say path count equals 1. And we're going to do destination equals path coords path count. We got our path coords here, and the path coords come from the config table, so it's this path. It's these vector coordinates. So the first destination is this one. That vector is going to be his first destination.
We got a question here, Sui.
Yep. Go ahead.
So Kirby says, so mission entity is a server side thing?
Mission entity is a server and client side thing. So if it's not it just means that the whatever that entity is assigned to a specific script, and he is going to remain until you release him. So if you ever set like if you spawn in a dog or something and you set it as a mission entity and you never release it, the dog will wander around until the server restarts, or the ped, or the prop, or whatever. So if you create a prop as a mission entity and you never release it, it'll never despawn unless you tell it to despawn, unless you delete it. So like if you have, like say you have like 3 bad guys that somebody's going to fight with, and they kill 2 of them and 1 gets away, well that bad guy will wander around until he's either killed, or you delete him, or you release him you set him as no longer needed, which we'll do later. So you'll see how to release them later. Did that answer the question?
I believe that did, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. All right, so now he knows where his destination is, so we need to send him to his destination. And the way you send a ped to a destination is using a FiveM native called task go to coord any means. And it's going to be the ped that you want to move, and you want him to go to an X location, a Y location, and a Z location. And the reason I have destination.x is because this is a vector 4 coord that we put in our config. You can see we did vector 4. So this is essentially a vector table is essentially a table. So this is .x, .x, .y, .z, and I believe this one is called .w maybe. It's either .w or .h. It seems like it should be .h, but I think it's usually .w, which doesn't make any sense. But then these two numbers right here, go to chords, any means. This is where all the numbers come from. So the first number is a driving flag, and the second one is max range to shoot targets. Is that right? So I might have just told you wrong. Blend ratio, vehicle. Yeah, driving flags. Yeah. I don't know, but if you scroll down here and you look at the, they got an example, I think. Maybe not. Anyway, we're going to move on because I can't tell you exactly why those are the numbers. I can just tell you that those are for sure the numbers 786603 and OXBF 800,000. All right. So he's going to the first destination point. So now we're gonna put in a while loop, and we're gonna watch for him to get to his destination. And we're gonna go ahead before we do anything else and put in our wait. Don't need that one yet. If you don't have a wait, you have an infinite loop. So it's always a good idea if you do a while loop to go ahead and put your wait on, so you don't forget to do that. That way, no matter what, you won't end up with an infinite loop. All right, so the hit chords is going to be a local value, and that's going to be where the PED that we created is at. We're going to get his entity chords each time we go through this loop and report where he's at. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to calculate the distance between him and his destination. So if you do distance equals, if you do a hashtag in front of something, that means that you're doing a calculation and you're going to return a number. So it's taken a vector 4 of his, a vector 3 of his chords. If you do this get entity chords, that's returned in a vector 3. And so we're going to define the destination as a vector 3 by doing the same thing that we did here with destination.x, y, and z. But we don't want to just put minus destination x, y, and z. We have to make it a vector 3 because we're doing a vector 3 minus a vector 3. And it's going to return a number value, which will be the distance of him from his destination point. And then we want to evaluate how close he is to his destination. You don't want this to be less than 0 because sometimes the PED can't get exactly to the coordinate. So 0.8 is like, it's less than a meter. So as long as he gets within a meter of the destination, something will happen. We're going to do a debug just to find out, make sure we're going through this and we're getting a distance. It's less than 0.8. Make sure there's nothing funky happening where it's, going into this if with greater than 0.8, which it can't really, but anyway. So if he's less than 0.8, we have to index his path count. So whenever we do path count plus 1, that's going to move it to the next one. So once he gets to this destination, then he'll go to destination 2. All right. And then but we don't want that to happen indefinitely because eventually he's going to reach the end of his path count. So if the path count is equal to 8, that's one more than our farthest path. So we want him to stop traveling there. So whenever he gets to his final destination, we're going to set final destination equals true. And the reason we do that is because we're doing this loop while not in final destination. Where did we define final destination? I missed it. Hold on. Path count equals 1. Local distance. Path chords. Okay, here we go. I missed before we did this, there was 2 more variables we needed. We don't need. Okay, so what I did here is let me go back and let's back up to here where we set our path count to 1. So that set our destination to 1, but then we immediately we set his destination to number 1 there, but we immediately want to index it so that the path count is 2 when it starts the loop, because he's going to start at he's going to be going to point 1, and we want him to, once it starts doing this loop, to be watching for him to get to point 2, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is basically like where he's spawning at, and then we're going to say, okay, his destination is just in front of his spawn, and then we want him to go to the second destination. That's why we have that path count +1. And so then our next destination is our path count +1, so that's destination 2. And our final destination is false because he hasn't reached the final index yet. Now, whenever he gets to path count equals 8, he will have reached his final destination, and so this will be true. Clear as mud. I'm not doing. I've been working in Unreal too much, and I'm kind of out of it on FiveM right now, to be honest with you. Let's see. We got to have another else statement. Okay, so if this is true, then it's going to break. Break just means it's going to exit. It's going to exit and do nothing else in the loop, and it's going to set final destination to true. So this while loop is going to exit. We're going to break so that we don't progress through the script, through the if statement, and we're going to turn off final destination because we just set it to true. Okay, but if he's not past 8, then we're going to set destination equals next destination because he's less than 0.8. So we had index next destination to number 2 here. So the first time it loops through and this becomes true, he's going to go to 0.2, and then we're immediately going to set the next destination equals to path coord's path count because we've indexed path count here. So path count's already been indexed. So on the first time through, this is going to be number 2, and then it's going to go to number 3 whenever this else statement happens. So number 1 is the spawn point, number 2 is his first destination, number 3 is his next destination. So whenever this happens, next destination is still path count 2, and then whenever we redefine next destination, we're changing it to path count 3. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not doing a great job of explaining things tonight. All right, so then we're going to, once we've changed the destination because we were less than 0.8, we're going to say task go to coords any means, and we're going to tell him to go to his new destination that we defined right here. That's why we wanted to do this break here, because if we didn't break, we set final destination to true, but we give him another task to go to a coord that doesn't exist, and we'd get an error message. That's why you have to have this break here, to let it know that it's done. You don't want to index his task go to. He's at his location where he needs to be. And then we got our wait there, and then we got our end, and that's the end of this rather long function. So all of this is what you have to do to give the hit target a path. That's how you do pathing. That's how you make him walk from one point to another. Okay, so whenever he gets to that end point, we're not done yet. When he gets to the end point, we want to do a debug so that we know his path is complete. And then that's when we're going to make him do something. So the way we make him pull out his camera and start taking pictures is using this task start scenario in place. So in the config, originally I had used the animation diction and the animation library, but there's actually an easier way to make a paparazzi. Since the paparazzi has a defined scenario, which is world human paparazzi, that's him flashing his pictures. Rather than having to load the animation dictionary and load the animation, there's another way you can do it, which is using these things. But instead of using those, I decided just to do a task start scenario in place and world human paparazzi. And the way you find those is you go to Google and you come here and you do task start scenario in place in your natives. And if you scroll through here, it shows you a list, but then there's a paste bin right here. So you copy that paste bin and you go to that paste bin, and here are all the potential scenarios. These don't work for every PED. They only work for specific PEDs that are assigned to those. So if you try to do task start scenario in place for a coyote on a person, nothing's going to happen. You have to have a coyote model. And for just like for the paparazzi, so if we search here for paparazzi, maybe that's not where I searched. If I just come here and I hit Control F, and then I can type paparazzi right here, and there's my paparazzi. Now some do work for everybody. I think World Human Partying works for most peds. These prostitute ones, I think those have to be prostitutes. I don't think you can do those for anybody. And I think these like push-ups, I think those have to be for bodybuilder peds, but I'm not certain about that. Anyway, you just have to experiment. If you try to use one of these and it doesn't work, it just means that your ped can't do that, doesn't have that scenario assigned to them in like the FiveM, internal documentation. And also sometimes it's male or female related. So this human paparazzi, it has to be the male paparazzi model. I tried to use a female model when I was testing and it didn't work, and that's why it didn't work, because they did not have that animation. Anyway, I've beat that dead horse. All right, so now we're going to do a debug to let us know that our animation should have started. That way, if he's not doing anything, but we get this message, then we know that this doesn't exist for that ped. And then we're going to send the player a notice and let him know that that he's in position, and we're going to give them 2 minutes to complete the mission once the ped's in place. And then we're going to say the reporter is not dead. We're going to set up a variable saying that he is not dead yet. We're going to set our timer to finish the mission to 2 minutes. We're going to say while the reporter is not dead and the timer is greater than 0, then we're going to check and see if the reporter's dead. We do that with is entity dead, hit ped, which is the name of our reporter. All right, if the reporter is not dead, then we're going to index the timer by 1 second, because we waited. The timer starts out at 120, because it's 120,000. It's 2 times 60 times 1,000. So every second we're going to reduce that, so they've got 2 minutes in order to get the mission done. And we're just checking to make sure if the reporter's dead or not. All right, and then that's it for that loop. All right. So if the reporter dies, then it's going to exit this loop, or if the timer expires, it's going to exit this loop, because we have this and statement right here. So this while loop is checking, is the reporter dead and is the timer greater than 0? So if either one of those variables becomes false, the loop will break. So if they run out of time, the loop will break, and if the reporter dies, the loop will break. So once the timer is broken, we're going to check and see, once this loop is broken, we're going to check and see if there's any time remaining on the timer. So if the timer is still greater than 0, then that means that they succeeded, because that's the only way you can exit this loop, is that they killed the reporter. So timer greater than 0 is the same as saying, yes, they killed the reporter. We're going to give them a notification to search the ped for proof of a kill. And then we're going to grab the ped coords with get entity coords the same way we did before when we were checking distance. And then we're going to create a QB target. We talked about this in lesson 1. We're just going to add a box zone, and our coords are going to be at the ped coords. So basically on the ground by the ped, we're going to create a ped box zone. And we're going to add an option from our config hit options, which we put here, which I didn't talk about earlier, but I've put in a QB target for it. It's going to be it's just going to be searching for a proof. It's going to be the label that pops up. It's going to have a magnifying glass. It's going to trigger the gather evidence function that we're about to write, and it's a client function. All right, so that's going to create our, once the reporter's dead, it's going to create a target, and it's going to right there set the entity as no longer needed. That way, whenever you walk away, the ped will despawn. If you don't set entity as no longer needed, there will be a dead ped laying there until the server resets. That's what I was talking about earlier with he will continue to exist until the server restarts. But whenever we set him as no longer needed, he won't immediately despawn. He will despawn when there's nobody around. And if the ped's not dead, then they failed the mission, so we give them an alert that they failed the mission because the timer was 0. Because if it was greater than 0, they succeeded. If it's 0 or less, then they failed. And in that case, we're going to clear all the ped tasks immediately because he's currently doing the paparazzi pictures. And then we're going to set him as no longer needed. So what that's going to do, that's going to stop him from taking pictures, and then he's going to wander off, and then he'll despawn when there's no clients around. And then that QB target is going to trigger a function, which is the dev training lesson 5 function. This one, gather evidence. Gather evidence. We're going to remove this exports QB target remove zone that deletes the target that we set on the ground so that the player can't third eye it again or nobody else can third eye it. We're going to say they got the evidence. We're going to set that variable to true. That was a variable we had set here. So we didn't have to define it as a local because we already defined it as a local to the script. We're going to notify the player that they gathered the evidence and tell them to return to mod. And then we're going to trigger the return to mod event. And basically what that's going to do is we're going to monitor the player and check and see when they get close to mod, and once they get back to mod's general vicinity, once you trigger this, we set got evidence to true there, and so this is true. So every second we're going to get the player, we're going to check their chords, we're going to check mod's location. Mod's location comes from the config file, and then we're going to calculate a distance. This is the same as we were doing for the pathing, except now we're checking between the player and mod. And once you're within 2 meters of mod, then we're going to trigger a notify telling you that you delivered the evidence to mod. We're going to do a payout. We're going to give the player XP. This is from our lesson that we did last time when we created our XP system. And our XP rewards are going to be relevant to Hitman. So let's see, where do we put XP rewards? We did that. That would have been lesson 4. Yeah, here we go. So Hitman, that'll give them 5 XP points whenever they complete that mission. And then we're going to say got evidence is false. That will exit this loop. And then you're done. And so we need a server event to get the actual payout. So we'll go over to our server. Again, you need your QB core export on top. And then we just need to put a simple payout. We're just going to pay them out in cash. So we're passing over payout from here because whenever we triggered the event, we sent the variable config.xp rewards hitman because this was a hitman mission. So this is going to send a variable of 5. That value would be 5 right there. So your source is going to be whichever client sent it over. It always gets source on the server side. We've talked about that before. We're going to put a debug just to make sure that how much they got paid out, make sure that payout was correct. Then we have to get the player with this QB core function, get player source. And then we're going to add money cash to them. And that is it for our hit mission. Let's save this. And we can go test it. So let's see 41 minutes. Wow, I thought this was going to be really fast, and I took 41 minutes to bumble through that. Anyway, let's get the server running. Am I still talking? Yeah, okay, good. I'm going to reset my headset or something. All right, let's see where we at. Test server, launch the server. Get our local host up. What the hell? Why is this? Oh, I know why. Because I clicked the wrong one. Hold on. Wait. Boop. Get out of there. This one. And then let's. Jeez. There we go. Now we're getting it. It's probably up and running by now. Not yet. All right. I did the same thing I always do. I forgot to launch Steam. I was helping a guy that's been watching the tutorial session the other night and did the exact same thing. So I consistently every time forget to launch Steam. Everybody doesn't have to do that, I guess, but we have our server set up with our security settings for allow listed runs through Steam. That's why we have to do that here. All right, well that's good, cool. Was it not open yet? God damn it. And I just closed it, I think. Yep. Okay, there we go. It's open now. What is going on? There we go. We're connecting. Okay.
Giving myself hella good vibes, even though you're fucking with other guys.
All right,
I've met
let's
women
go.
of different types, different shapes, and all kinds of different sizes. I'm giving myself hella good feelings.
If we really wanted to get crazy, we could give ourselves a weapon and we could go shoot this guy and all that stuff, but I'm just gonna beat him up
different courses, but I'm
because I'm in a
not
hurry.
succeeding. Green in the air, oh, it's all I'm breathing.
All right, here we go. I think I was in ammunition last time. Let me go grab my cords for mod. Where am I at here? Less than 5. Less than 5? Config. Alright, so I've already updated the database. I have enough experience. If I didn't, I don't have an ink pen, I bet. Let me check my pockets. Fuck. Stuttering. I do not have an ink pen. There we go. So now I can pick sign Hitman contract. Boom. And then he is going to be spawning on the boardwalk in 20 seconds. So I'm just going to start flying over there. It'll be 20 seconds and I'll get a email telling me that he has spawned in. Okay, so the reporter's on the boardwalk and I just got my email, so I can come in here. And that's actually him walking right there. He came out of that door. So that's our ped walking his path. I'll check my email while he's walking. From Mod. Mod needs you to take out a reporter. He likes to photograph the Ferris wheel. So I know who it is, but if I was a player that was traveling over here, and 20 seconds is probably a little too fast for them to get here. But anyway, we could put a delay in there between when they get the email and when he spawns in and stuff, but we're just doing this for demonstrative purposes and to speed things along. So you see he's walking pretty smooth between those path coordinates because of the way we did it, so that he doesn't have to be right on the coordinate. If you set it where he's right on the coordinate, he'll actually stop and then start walking again. But since we did it the way we did with 0.8, he walks pretty smooth. And so this should be his final destination. And then there he is. He's doing his scenario. He's taking photos. Now, if I waited 2 minutes, the mission would fail and he would walk away. But we're not going to wait 2 minutes. We're just going to kill him. Alright, he just died because I have my debug on for my target. So it says search the ped for evidence. And the reason I did it this way is because if I set it up on just the ped, yeah, so you can loot the ped. So if you set up a box around them, you can search around the body, and you can get search for proof instead of loot ped. So anyway, search for proof. We got our evidence. Return to mod. And when we get within 2 feet of mod, there we go, evidence delivered. And we just got paid $2,000 for the hit. We can check the database and we'll see that we've gotten 5 XP points, but we didn't check it before, so I don't know where it was before. I forgot what we called it. Dev training, maybe? Dev training? Yeah, dev training. And there's my guy. He's got 22, so he had 17 before. And just to make sure we can check and see if we had any error messages, there's all our debugs that we put in. Started hit, initiated timer, reporter hit started. We got the correct animation dictionary and library, which we didn't even use, but you know, if we wanted to use them, they're there. That's just all of our debugs that we had put in and payout. So everything worked, no errors. We can check real quick in our F8. This is not related to this script, and that's not related to this script, so no errors. There you go. Quick one, very terrible explanation. I apologize. Like I said, I've been working in Unreal for 7 days straight, 8 days straight, so learning how to make actual games. And I'm a little rusty because I'm old, and so I forget things quickly. Anyway, thank you guys for joining the class. Does anybody have any questions? I can look at the chat now, see what's going on. No questions. All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.